Hi everyone, welcome to the Techie Garage, and today we are going to be talking about linting in Android projects. What is linting? Linting is basically automating the checking of your code for stylistic or programmatic errors. A simple example can be something like indentation, so how you indent your code in the different uh, classes you have or the methods you have in those classes. Another example could be how complex a function or class can be. If you have a class that is too many lines of code and potentially this class you could optimize it or abstract functionality outside this class for it to do exactly what it needs to do, then a linting tool will help you check that. And you may be thinking, if my code compiles correctly, if I'm able to run the app on my machine and test all the user flows on the application, why do I need to be linting and not doing all these things? So probably the first advantage is it increases and maintains your code quality. A lot of the linting tools available check your code against the coding conventions of the language or the platform you're developing for. So over time, you enforce recommended industry practice for the platform that you're building for. The second bit is consistency, obviously. If you're working in a team of more than one developers, everyone probably has an opinion on how they think things should be formatted or how they like to format. But because this is a shared project, you cannot have a project that has everyone writing their own things. Probably there's someone who's using snake case to name functions, another one wants to use camel case. But for a shared project, you probably want a bit of uniformity in the styling and how sort your structure of your code base, your directories. So a linting tools would really come in handy in ensuring consistency such that even if a new person comes into this team, they're not confused about what format am I supposed to follow. If they're moving from this module to the next, it does not feel like an entirely different project, right? And the other advantage would probably be code reviews become more efficient in a team setup. If you all have agreed on a linting tools or a linting tool that you're going to use and the rules that you want them to enforce in terms of, again, let's use an example like naming your classes and functions, and you're all running it as team members. If I, as a team member, work on a task and open a pull request and run the linting tools, then this makes it easier for the team members to review the code in the sense that instead of them focusing on telling me, you need to indent this part or remove this variable that you're not using or stop using snake case in a function, then they can focus on the logic or what the task is really doing and let the simple, not so important things be done by a linting tool. So could reviews become very, very efficient if everyone in the team is following the same standard for how the code is structured. And probably just as a side note, now that we have the advantages down, is um, Linting is not only available for Android projects. So if you're building for something else, you can research around for good tools that can enforce linting in your code base. For example, I've seen for Angular, there's something called ESLint. So yeah, look around, see what linting tools are available for the platform you're building for, then enforce that. And yeah, now that you're specifically on the Android bit, what tools are available to us or how can we enforce linting in our project? The first thing that we have is something called Android Lint, and you probably may not have noticed it or have known, but Android Studio as an IDE comes integrated with a linting tool, and it's when you're writing your code in an Android project, you may have noticed yellow lines or sometimes red lines based on the severity of the error being highlighted. So the yellow warnings are for warnings that you can comfortably ignore and your code will still compile and run. For the red ones, your code will not compile actually. So things, for example, the yellow one may be on things like you have a variable you've declared somewhere that you're not using anyway. Maybe you declared it as a parameter in a function and it's not being used in that function. You have an import that is in your file that is also not being used. And the linting tools basically tells you this is not required, you can remove it, and your code is okay. Right? So that's an example of a linter that we already have, but this provides very basic functionality and you probably want to enhance the lint checks a bit more. And the tools you have for that for Android, there's a linting tool called Ktlint. Ktlint captures the Kotlin coding conventions and also the Android Kotlin style guide. So it will be enforcing rules, for example, on, again, example we give on naming, on how in Kotlin you name your functions in camel case, classes also in camel case, but with a capital letter for the beginning word. In terms of how you name your packages or directories in the project structure, um, I can probably pull some of the rules in the documentation so that you can quickly look at that. So yes, so if we go to the rules here, yes, so something to probably mention is Ktlint has different rule sets. So there's the standard rules, there's the experimental rules, there's something called the custom rule set. So we are going to explore the standard rules for this video. So you can see on my right, I hope, on my right, you have all these set of rules that Ktlint will help you enforce in terms of formatting and styling. So you have something like final new line, function signature, import ordering, indentation, naming again as we mentioned, and you can scroll, and these are all the rules available in the standard rule set. You can probably look at one. So no line break after else, and the rule says disallows line breaks after the else keyword if that could lead to confusion, for example. So let's look at what it does not allow. So if condition A do something else, and then you're breaking to the next line for the if, and then the condition do another thing. So this one will be flagged if you have integrated Ktlint in your code, and Ktlint wants you to have a format that looks like this. So if condition do this, else if in the same line, then do the next thing. So this is just an example of the rules that are available in the rule set. I will link the documentation in case you want to explore and look at the different rules that are there, which ones are interesting or not interesting for you. But yes, that is basically Ktlint. So for these rules, once you integrate Ktlint, you can still be able to disable them or enable them based on your project needs, or you can choose to configure them to probably work or flag the rules in certain files and not others, or flag the rules based on certain conditions. Maybe there's a file that you want to just not follow what the rule wants you to do based on the needs of your project. So with that being said, we can try a bit of integration on a sample project. So we are going to pull up the project. So for this project, it's an application that basically runs, and you're able to see a text that says you successfully ran the Techie Garage episode 2 demo app on Linting. So that's what the project does. We can look at the project structure a bit. So it just has a main activity. The main activity has a composable that has the text that we have just seen. Yeah, so that is the structure of the project. So how do you go about implementing Ktlint in this project to help us with our styling and formatting? So we are going to add Ktlint as a dependency at the project level. So let me just pick up this dependency. And in the specific module that we want to use it, we are going to also add it here. In our case, the app module. And we think the project for the dependency to now apply. So give it a few minutes for it to check. As the syncing continues, the other thing we want to do is probably configure some things with regards to Ktlint. So inside our Android block here, we are going to do a bit of configurations. I need the, okay, it's done. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of configuration. So this keyword should check once the syncing is done. Okay, so yeah, so you can see that this keyword checks now that the dependency has applied on my case, and the configuration we want to do is we want to tell the Ktlint to use the Android Kotlin guide for checking our project. Then we want it to not ignore any failures that are flagged. So ignore failures false. And the last bit we probably want to configure is to get a report on any failures that we get once we run our checks. So we are going to add reporters that are going to appear in our generated build file once we run the lint checks. So you can have different formats for the reporters. So for the first one, you can try have a JSON format. It's reporter type. Reporter type JSON. I want to have a JSON one and an XML one. So if I open this, you can see the different types of reporters you can have. You can have a plain one, plain group by file, check style that looks like XML, JSON, serif, or HTML based on how you want your reporter to look. So on my end, I just prefer the JSON and the XML one. So let's run this, sync this, I mean. Okay. And as we wait for our thing to end, so once you've added the dependencies and configure this, then you'll automatically have a Gradle task called Ktlint check that you can use to run on command line to now check, do the lint checks on your code base. And the other thing to mention is you can use this on command line or also install Ktlint as a plugin. So in our case, we are going to use this on the command line. So now that our thinking is done, we have a Gradle task called Ktlint check that you can run and see any issues on our project. Let's see. Let me just expand this a bit. So let's see what we have. Yeah, so you can see that our bill has failed and we have errors highlighted. So for instance, in the Kotlin script check, we can see on the build.gradle file, there's an error file must end with a new line, which is a rule that's being violated. Trailing spaces, unexpected indentation. In the test sort set, we can see in the example instrumented test class, file must end with a new line, imports must be ordered in lexicographic order, which is more like alphabetical order. You have a wildcard import in this class. So to probably view this from the reports that we try to have them in JSON and Kotlin, you can see here you have a report that's been generated for the project. And if you go to app module that I want to focus on and reports, you can see the reports in the different formats that we have. In our case, this first one is JSON. And so the error we're having is in our example instrumented class. These are the errors that we have. We have file must end with a new line and the rule being violated in the Ktlint set of rules is the standard rule called final new line. The second rule is standard import ordering that is being violated. The third one is no wildcard imports. We can try go to this other one. So this is how like it will report in the check style format. Yeah, so but yeah, this one is a bit more readable file by file. If you want to check this on the reports. So how do we then fix the issues you're having? And to close the ones that to the right. Okay. So for instance, if you go to this class that is being checked, there's this wildcard import issue that is being flagged. So you can choose to actually, before we go to actually generally fixing the issue, apart from this task that's created that is called Ktlint check. Ktlint also provides you with something else that automatically fixes some of the errors. For instance, if the issue is something like indentation, or if the issue is something like adding a new line to your file, you probably do not want to go to every single file just to indent. If you have like 50 files flagged, you don't want to go to every single file just to indent. If there's a way that it can be done automatically, Ktlint can do that for you. So the task is called Ktlint format. So we are going to run Ktlint format and see if some of our issues that were flagged will be automatically fixed. So if we look at our test source set, we had three rules that stood out. We had the rule on wildcard import, we had the other one on final new line, we had the other one on, I'm forgetting, import ordering, I think. But the other two have been sorted. The only rule that is pending is this wildcard import, and it tells us this cannot be auto corrected. So Ktlint format will not automatically fix that for you, but all the other errors we're having have already been fixed. So we can just go directly to the file and see what the issue is. In this case, it's the wildcard import, so I can remove, and I want to import the exact thing that's required instead of a general asterisk for that. Yeah, so if we now run the rule, this error on this file on the wildcard import should, I needed to run Ktlint check, but okay. But yeah, so the error should be auto-corrected now. Just wait for it to finish. Yeah, so the error is auto-corrected in the example instrumented test class, but it's failing in a different file. The same error that cannot be auto-corrected, so we need to go and correct. And probably the other thing to mention is this are just random generated files. You can choose to also just remove this file and this file, because, and then once you have your actual unit test that you've written, instead of this one that is generated when you create a project, yeah, you can choose to delete this instead of probably fixing the errors on this. And then once you have your own unit test, you can run against the actual ones that you've written. So let's fix that second one. I don't know if there's another file that has that wildcard import, but let's see. I'm running again Ktlint format, okay. But okay, so our issues on this test files on the wildcard import are now gone. I'm seeing new errors in the main source set. Okay, so in the main activity, there's an error. Let's just close this and move to Android. Okay, so in the main activity, there's an error that is saying function name should start with a lowercase letter, except factory methods, and use camel case. So in terms of naming in Kotlin, functions should always be camel case format, and in our case, whatever is flagged is line 42, the function greeting. But the function greeting is a composable function, and composable functions should be camel case, but with an uppercase for the first word. So this is automatically flagged, but really it should not be flagged because it's a composable function. So what we want to do is to disable the rule that is flagging this function name, but we want to flag it specifically. We want to disable it specifically for composable functions, so not any other functions. So to be able to disable a rule, I want to go back to the project structure and get the actual rule name. Okay. Allow me to just clean this and run the Ktlint check again. So let's clean this and get new reports that are a bit more readable. Okay. Okay, so the generated build inside app module are gone. So let's run Ktlint check again to get our reports. Yeah, so again, flagging is in the one that you're looking for. So I want to go to the build and look at a bit more info on that. So in our main activity class, again, we can see now the errors that are being flagged. So the first one was the function name. Function name should start with a lowercase letter. So the name of this rule that we want to disable is function naming, and it's part of the standard rule set. So to be able to configure disabling or enabling a rule in Ktlint, you need to create a file, the editor config file. If it doesn't already exist, then configure the rules in that file. If you just search for editor config, it should automatically generate this for us actually. Yeah, editor config file. So it will automatically generate this file for us. So if you go to project structure and let's close this. Yeah, if we go to our project structure, this file should be somewhere here. I'm not sure why it's not reflecting. Let's try create it again, or just a minute. Check where it's. Okay, the editor config has been created inside our reports, but that's really not where we want it to be. So I want to move it to our project structure. So let me move that editor config file here. Yeah, so if I close this, you can see, yes, you can see the editor config file here. And the reason I moved it to the project structure is because I want the configurations I'm doing to apply to the general project, or I could have chose to move it to just the app level if I want the rules that I'm trying to configure to apply just to the app module. But yeah, in our case, I want it to apply to the general project. And the first rule that I wanted to disable is the function naming, or just to change it to tell it like this rule should not flag composable functions, because ideally that's how they should be named. Probably another rule I usually find not important to have is the find all new line rule that is trying to enforce having a new line at the end of every file. So you can choose to also disable that. And to disable a rule, this is how you do it. Let's pull the documentation and look at disabling rules. So the first thing, the convention for disabling is Ktlint, an underscore, and then the specific rule set. So if the rule that's being violated is in the standard rule set, you'll have Ktlint underscore the rule set it's part of underscore the name of the rule that you want to disable. So in our case, let's just get this block, this line. So if we come here, and the rule that we are violating that we want to configure in our case is standard function naming. So we want to take this and move it here. Standard function naming. Okay, no, actually, let's use the other example. The final new line one. That's already been corrected, but so the name, the rule ID is final new line. So if I wanted to disable the whole rule generally, this is how I would do it. Disabled. So again, Ktlint, the rule set it's part of, and then the name of the rule that we want to disable fully. So this is how I'll do it if I want to disable the rule completely. In our case, for the naming, we actually don't want to disable this rule completely because we want camel case naming for all our functions, but we want to disable it specifically for composable functions. So we can't do this. So for specific rule configuration, there's a different way of doing it. So if we go to Ktlint configuration and we go to rule specific configuration and our rule something like the function naming rule, there's something called Ktlint function naming ignore when annotated with. So this is what we use to specify disabling this rule, but specifically for the composable annotation for our composable functions. So I'll have this here and then I'm going to tell it when the function is annotated with composable. Yeah, so ignore when this function is annotated with composable. So the rule will run and flag any function that's not following the rule except the composable ones because we are configuring it to ignore composable functions specifically. And if we run Ktlint check again, it's clear. If we run Ktlint check again here, we should not be seeing our composable functions being flagged again on the naming rule. So let's run that and see. And there you have it. So your build is successful. You don't have any new rules that are being flagged. So that means all your rules have, all the issues you are being flagged on have been sorted. And if we actually go to the commit tab here, you can see all the changes you have from the ones that were automatically formatted and that you can now commit as changes that have been updated. So an example is our type file typography. Before it was this way, and then it's been formatted to this style of formatting. Same case to our theme, and the composables we have in the theme. In the main activity, this is a fix on adding the trailing comma at the end of this parameter. The composable for the greeting that was showing the text is also reformatted to this format. And yeah, so these were the ones that were done by the automatic formatting. The only ones that we did were the ones that cannot be auto-corrected by Ktlint format, for example, the wildcard import and disabling the rule on our composables. So that is basically how you can set up Ktlint to flag any issues with formatting and configure it differently based on the needs of the project. Another interesting rule that I saw that I was flagged on on one of my project was actually in how I had my functions. So let's go to a sample file. I want to go to, say, my build.gradle file for the app side, and let's say I've added a dependency here, and then when maybe I wanted to document, add comments, but like the Kotlin documentation comments that you can use. So I have a comment here that says add dependency, or anything I wanted to have there. Then at the top here, I had a to do, a one line comment, end of line comment, that was a to do item to probably say to remove this dependency, then see after. So I have here a multi-line comment that documents in Kotlin, and then I have single line comments here at the top. So there's a Ktlint rule that will automatically flag this. And the thing is, if you already have a multi-line comment somewhere, probably this can straight away go to these multi-line comments that you have. You don't need to have this at the top here. So there's no need for an end of line comment and also a multi-line comment for the same thing. So let's test if it's actually going to flag with what we had. So if we run Ktlint check, and then see. Yes. So the rule is saying in our build.gradle file, a kdoc may not be preceded by an end of line comment unless separated by a blank line. So it cannot be automatically corrected if we run Ktlint format. So we have to actually go to the file and correct that. So I found that pretty useful also, because if you have already this multi-line, then you don't need this end of line here. You would probably like ideally go here. But if you move this, it won't flag it anymore. But that was an interesting rule that was flagged on that I found, is a bit useful to not having unnecessary, types of comments when it's not really needed. But yes, that is basically it. So if I move this, I'll probably just demo the issue being fixed here. But yeah, so it shouldn't flag us anymore. But yes, that is mostly it on how you go about integrating Ktlint. I'm going to link the documentation to Ktlint and this project that we're trying to enforce linting on down below in case you want to check them out. And yeah, so you can see that I've actually successfully finished fixing lint issues on my project. So I'm going to commit this to our repository that we are going to share the link on. But yes, that is basically it on this video. I'm going to link everything on the documentation and the project down below in the comments. If you have anything that you want to, a Ktlint rule that you feel like is really important, or that is usually disabled or enabled, that would want to give feedback on, you can open an issue on the repository, or any feedback on the video, feel free to reach out. But that is it on this video. If you got to this point of the video, thank you so much, and see you in the next episode.